Okay, hi guys again. My name is Joanna Osogo, like Professor Hansen told you. I graduated from the Marshall School of Business last December, and I decided to go back to my home country of Kenya and started a social entrepreneurship company called Jitahidi Group. Jitahidi is Swahili for pull yourself up by the bootstraps. So the reason I gave my company this name is I really believe in teaching a man how to fish instead of giving them the fish. Jitahidi Group is a career development agency. Basically what we do is there's a huge wealth gap in Kenya between the rich and the poor. And I was surprised when I found out that in order to be able to get an internship in Kenya, you have to be connected, like you have to know someone to get you this internship. So I thought this was very unfair because I like the US system where your grades, your volunteer experience, your leadership experience is what gets you the internship, not who you know. So I decided to start this group. We do networking events, career preparation, entrepreneurship, just anything that can help pull the youth of Kenya out of poverty. A little background about myself. I was born and raised in Nairobi, Kenya. I grew up in a slum called Huruma. So I tried to get a picture to show you guys what Huruma looks like. And this was the closest picture that I could get. And honestly, the picture doesn't do as much justice to what the slum of Huruma is. But like you can see, it's overcrowded. These are clothes, people hang their clothes outside of the flats. And you can see that there's both informal and formal structures. So I was lucky enough, I lived in a formal structure, not an informal structure. Quick history about myself. I was raised by a single mother. My brother and I were raised by a single mother in Huruma. And my life story is actually very, there's a lot of duality in my story because my father passed away a month before I was born. So my father came from a rich family. He was actually the chief inspector of schools, which is the equivalent of the Secretary of Education here in the US. And his brother, my uncle, was actually a member of parliament. He was actually a finance minister at some point in Kenya. And my mom's side of the family is very poor. So when my father passed away, my mom was thrown into poverty just because my father's relatives, they pretty much took all his property, So my mom had my brother and I, and she had to start over in life. So I was raised in the slum my whole life. And even though I was raised in the slum, I think I was still a little bit privileged because, like I said, my uncle was a member of parliament. So I went to school with his children. So for lunch, he would come and pick us up and take us to his house, and we'd have lunch there. So I would, experience one side of Kenya, the wealthy side, and then in the evening go back to this, So I think that made me want to get out of poverty compared to someone who doesn't get to go to the wealthier side, of Kenya. So I did well in school. I graduated from high school, and I was desperate just to get out of this situation because to give you, I'm trying to paint the picture for you. This is called a plot. So you live in a plot, and there's usually a gate at the plot, and our gate, when you open it, right across from you would be a dump of garbage, and sometimes there would be aborted babies that would be on the dump. So I just, from a young age, I really wanted to get out of that situation. And when I tell you that we lived here, we weren't as poor as the people in the informal structure, definitely, but we lived in a one-room house. And that doesn't, it's not a house, one room, not a one-bedroom apartment, So probably half of this room was used as the living room, as the bedroom, as the kitchen, and then the bathroom and the toilet and the area for washing your dishes was outside, So when I graduated from high school, I was lucky enough, my uncle paid all my way through school, so So I was lucky enough, he agreed to pay for me to go to university. But I opted to go, and because I learned French in high school, so I opted to go to Alliance Française and continue my French education. And I did that for maybe less than a year, and I got an opportunity to go to France as an au pair. I don't know if you guys are familiar with what an au pair is. You basically live with a French family, and you babysit for them a few hours of the day. You know, so that was my ticket out of Kenya. So I lived in France for about a year and a half, and I decided that I wanted to come to the US because everybody wants to come to the US. Yeah. So I applied for my visa and I came to the US, and after a long time, I'm not going to go into the details just because of the time, but it took me a long time before I was able to come to USC. Before USC, I went to a community college, it's called Chaffey College, and I did my 2 years there, and then I applied to USC, and I was lucky enough to get into USC, and so I graduated from USC, so that's where my story, that's pretty much the background of my story. Why social entrepreneurship? To be honest with you, probably before I met Professor Hansen, I did not think of social entrepreneurship. I mean, I always wanted to help people in Kenya, but it was more from the sense of I'll work and then I'll give money to somebody, maybe pay their fees or something like that, you know, but not doing it full time. But we've had a lot of conversations with Professor Hansen, and then I was lucky enough, Ansel invited me to be on the founding committee for Holt Prize. I don't know if you guys are familiar with what Holt Prize is. I would very much recommend for you guys to look it up and participate in that, because that's one of the tools. They deal with a lot of how to bring people out of poverty and things like that. So if you're interested in social entrepreneurship, I would really recommend Holt Prize. But after doing the fall of last year with Ansel, bringing Holt Prize to USC is when I really got serious about doing social entrepreneurship in Kenya. And I went to Kibera a couple of times because I wanted to take pictures for you guys so that you guys could see what life is like in Kibera. So this picture, you can see that there's a man here, there's garbage, and there's a man rummaging through the garbage. What he's looking for is recyclables so that he can go and sell it to a recycling plant and get some money from that. But I also want you to realize that there's a tarmac road right here, and there's another one up here. You can't really see it that well, you know. And then all these umbrellas on the side, you can see in the other picture also, the umbrellas represent vendors. These people are selling things from toothpaste, from food, from roasted maize, anything you can think about. They're selling to get a living for themselves and to be able to pay school fees for their children.
Joanne, I'm going to ask you to refer to what you're talking to on the screen here, not on your computer.
Okay.
No, next slide. It's
okay. I also wanted to just point out that the reason that I showed these pictures in particular is to show you that even though there's poverty in Kibera, these people are probably the most tenacious people that I have met, to be honest with you, because this is economic activity. They're not just sitting there and waiting for handouts. They're trying to make a life out for themselves. And for my next slide, I wanted to define what Africa is. A lot of the times when you think of Africa, the previous pictures that I showed you is what will come to mind. You will think that that is Africa. That's a representation of Africa, but it's not a full representation of Africa. Like any other place, Africa has poor people and rich people. And like I said before, the wealth gap is so huge that the poor people are almost at the point of despair. But there are very rich people. This is a fashion show in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and this is apartment homes in Nairobi, Kenya. So there are very wealthy people. My next slide is beautiful home, and this is in Nairobi, Kenya. There's a booming real estate right now in Kenya. So there's people who have a lot of money, and this is the skyline of Nairobi at night. So I wanted to like kind of debunk this, what we think Africa is, because there's two sides to Africa, just like any other country. Even here, we have very rich people and we have very poor people. My next slide, I saw this and I thought this was genius. There's a gentleman who has opened a dry cleaning place. This is in the middle of Kibera, and I just thought that, he is someone worth mentioning because he hasn't given up that he's living in poverty. He's trying to make a living for himself, and he's figured out that if he advertises his business, he has the sign of what they're doing and he has the advertisement. And just that there's a dry cleaning place in Kibera shows that these people have dignity and they just happen to be in that situation. It's not a completely desperate situation. So I came across this saying that I wanted to share with you guys. It says that sympathy is easy. You have sympathy for starving children swatting at flies on late night commercials. Sympathy is easy because it comes from a position of power. Empathy is getting down on your knees and looking someone else in the eye and realizing you could be them, and that all that separates you is luck. So when you go as a social entrepreneur, as a volunteer, or if you're working in a slum with people who are not as privileged as you are, try and be empathetic. Put yourself in their position. Don't look at their problems from your perspective. So I took pictures of the economic activities that are going on in Kibera. Here you can see this person is selling household items, anything from toothpaste to soap, different things, and the price range is from 30 cents to about $1.50 for the toothpaste. And if you look at it, there's no shop. This is just on the street. They set up a table. This person here set up a table and put up an umbrella because of the scorching, hot sun, and puts his wares to be sold. And by doing this, he doesn't have to worry about paying rent. He doesn't have to worry about paying electricity, water, and all other things that you take for granted. And this allows him to make the little money that he makes without having to pay to different people. And the next slide is someone selling tomatoes. And then here I was trying to show you that there's so much economic activity in Kibera. These are shops, and the whole street is just lined with shops, with people just trying to etch a living for themselves. And something that I found interesting is, apart from the large shots that I took, when I went to the individual vendors and told them that I was coming to speak to a class and I wanted to take a picture, none of them would allow me to take a picture of them because they thought that I will either get economic benefit from it, like I will sell the picture and they will not benefit from that, or they were worried about their privacy, like I'll put it on a website or something like that, which I found very interesting. So this just shows that these people have been inundated by people just coming in and pretty much invading their lives, that they're to a point that they just want to keep living their lives. They're not, there for show, So
They're not there to be in a reality show.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. So I convinced them to just take pictures of what they were selling, and that's the only way that I could take pictures of them. And I'm sure all of you are aware of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When you go and work with people who are underprivileged, please realize that they are at this level where they're fulfilling their physiological needs, and you're probably at the esteem and self-actualization level. So when you talk to them and you're wondering, why can't you just, for example, there's a lot of people back to back, most of them are selling the same thing, so you wonder, why can't they just innovate and maybe put up a store and have it be clean, and then they would be able to attract more customers and they'll be able to sell for a higher price. Please realize that most of their customers are residents of Kibera. So if this person raises the price from, let's say, 10 cents to 50 cents, he's going to lose his customers. So he has no incentive to do what you're telling him. So the reason I put this slide is for you guys to realize that when you're looking at their problems, don't look at it from your perspective. Look at it from their perspective. Be empathetic and put yourself in their shoes and try to solve the problem from that perspective. My advice, I don't know if there's anybody, is there anybody who's interested in social entrepreneurship? Oh, you are, and you are. Great, great. My advice to you guys and everybody else, because like I said, I never thought I was a social entrepreneur until I went back to Kenya. My advice to you is fail forward, don't be afraid to do, because for me, for example, I'm going back to my family in Kenya, and all they're thinking is, you had the opportunity to live and work in the US, but you opted to come back. You're crazy, you need to go back to the US and make money, you know. So there'll be a lot of people who are second guessing you. There'll be a lot of people who will probably not respect your time, who will, you know, think that you're just doing some kind of thing, because there's a lot of NGOs that have been working in Kibera and around the world for years, but there hasn't really been any result, tangible result, you know. So don't let that discourage you to feel like, you know, I can't do this. And trust me, it's a very frustrating experience in the beginning, because I pretty much have yourself, you know, and you have to every day just remind yourself why you're doing this, you know. So don't let other people change your course of what you want to do. When you go to the communities, respect their dignity. Like I told you, none of the vendors would let me take pictures of them, but they would just let me take pictures of you know, their wares. So realize that these are people who have their lives ongoing, who have dreams and hopes and aspirations, and they all have their dignity. So when you talk to them as if it was you in their shoes. My next advice, which I think is very important, is partner with a local person. We've seen so many people who have good intentions who come to Africa or anywhere where there's underprivileged people, and they just stick in their own cocoons and they come with their own solutions and they think that they'll be able to solve it that way. It doesn't work. Because number one, I'll tell you, the local people will look at you as some kind of lottery ticket. Because the perception is that everybody in America is rich, and not just rich, but Bill Gates type of rich, you know? So your prices will be doubled instantly. Like this figure here, if you were to go buy it, your price will probably be doubled or even tripled, you know. So it's very important to partner with a local person, not just because of the cost, but also the local person will show you around, will show you the real Kenya or the real place that you're going to see. I'll give you an example. I have a 5-year-old daughter, and she fell sick. And in the middle of the night, we had to take her to hospital. And my brother-in-law told me, let's take her to Kenyatta Hospital, which is a national hospital. It's a referral hospital. And honestly, I was not prepared for the scene that I saw at the hospital. You know, there was people who were at the brink of death. Like, I saw a little child the mother said he was 9 months old, but he looked like he was 4 months old because he was very undernourished, you know. And they're just things that you will not get to experience if you just stay with the NGO community and stay in the wealthier side of Kenya. So you will only see the wealthier, you know, people, but you will not, if you're going to solve a problem, let's say poverty, how are you going to solve it if you're not interacting with these people and actually getting their take, or getting a local person who will tell you, oh, this has been done, but they've used the system in this way or that way, you know? Because a friend of mine works with the youth in Kibera who are HIV positive, and she was telling me the worst thing that you could do is think that if you go and pay their rent for 1 year, that you're solving a problem. you're not solving any problem, you're creating a victim, because after the 1 year, he's gonna come back again and want his rent paid. So it's very important to work with someone who already knows how the system works there, so that you can be able to make it better. You can bring your ideas and bring your heads together and make it better.
Joanne, can you just take a second and tell us what an NGO community is? I think I know, but I'm not so sure.
So an NGO community, first of all, an NGO is a non-governmental organization, and they're usually a charitable organization, so they get funding, usually from here in the US. They'll get funding, and with that funding, they'll go and solve whatever problem that they have to solve. But it's very important to know that from that funding, they get their salary. So I was speaking with someone who works in Kibera, and they were telling me that there's probably around 3,000 NGOs in Kibera, and she was saying that about 2,500 of them are not really trying to solve any problem. They're just there to get the salary.
Yeah.
So
good. That's good.
NGO,
thank you.
this is not to take away from what there's NGOs that do well.
Yes.
So that kind of loops in to my other point of don't be a volunteerist. Don't go there just for salary. Because if you're getting paid, let's say $5,000 here versus in Kenya, $5,000 in Kenya is a lot of money. 5,000 here might be just enough to sustain you. So there are people who go there and just be volunteers. Please do not do that. It's better you just stay here. Because keep asking yourself, am I teaching this person how to fish, or am I just giving them fish? And that should be your guide as to if you're actively working to pull this person out of poverty and put them in a better situation, then I think that you're doing a good thing. My next point is to actively seek a mentor. I never realized how important a mentor is until I graduated and I went to Kenya and I was there on the ground. And trust me, we are in a kind of shielded environment. A lot of people here are very privileged, but when you go into the real world and constantly you're just being told no, no, or nobody's seeing the value of what you're doing, or you just get burnt out, you need a mentor who will guide you. And I was lucky enough to reach out to Professor Hansen, and he has been a mentor and he has done so much for me, just telling me, well, maybe try it this way instead of another way. The next point is to network. This is also a very important point. My team, the mentors that I have for my website are all USC alum. And when I was at USC, I never really networked a lot. I mean, I talked to people, but not really thinking that, I will need them for the company. And another mistake that I made, because I thought I was going to be an entrepreneur, is I never got on LinkedIn. I thought to myself, oh, LinkedIn is just for finance majors or marketing. I never thought that I needed it. But when I started my company is when I realized the importance of networking and LinkedIn. Because when I reached out to my friends, immediately they all said that they would do it. And these are people who are very busy, But because when we worked together in the group projects, I always did my part and brought value to, what we were doing. So what you're doing right now affects what will happen to you when you graduate. Because if you're known as a person who never does their group project or never shows up, when, let's say you start a company, people might not want to work with you as much. So I already talked about don't be a volunteerist. Don't create a victim. I talked about that one too. Unfortunately, I created my own victim when I first went back to Kenya. My childhood friend reached out to me and he wanted to borrow some money. And it was just $20, but in Kenya $20 is 2,000 shillings, which is, he wanted to do some kind of business with it. So I lent him the money, and then about 2 weeks later, he paid it, and then he asked for $50, and I lent that to him. But he hasn't paid back the $50. So he's figured out that I can always be coming back here. Sometimes I'll pay it back, sometimes I won't. So it's very important that you do not create a victim. It's better to teach him, how to get himself out of the position that he's in. The last point is get involved. I kind of talked about Hall's Prize, which honestly I think is a great organization if you want to go the social entrepreneurship route.
We might ask Ansal to talk about that a little bit later too. Because that sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
good.
maybe she can talk about it now.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, before you finish.
Hey guys, so you heard about the Holt Prize. First of all, Professor Hansen is the faculty advisor for Holt Prize.
That's right.
Right?
Interesting,
Okay.
interesting
So
thing
Holt
about
Prize
that.
is an international social enterprise competition. It's open to students from all over the world. There's usually a case given by Bill Clinton every year, and I think he just gave it out on October.
I haven't heard what it is yet, so
Yeah, I think it's.
I'm curious.
He said it was like, oh, it's about I think trying to connect the urban slums. I don't know. It's weird this year.
Okay.
Usually we know it's energy, food, education, whatever. But this time it's different. But I think yesterday Ramaya was talking about it. Ramaya is a new campus director. That's some things. Anyway,
What's her last name? What's Ramaya's last name?
Ramaya Campbell. She was the. You remember?
No, I've met with her. I'm
Okay.
just,
Okay, so Ramaya Campbell is the new campus director, and I think Professor Hansen, you should plug that in maybe next time. We can hold it.
Sure, I will.
So anyway, so students from all over the world form teams to bring solutions. So whatever case is given every year, let's say for example last year was education. So trying to bridge the gap between the privileged and the underprivileged, and it's always centered around urban slums. And when you're talking about urban slum, you just don't think about Kibera slum or Soweto in India, whatever, Brazil. We have slums here as well.
yeah, we have them here. That's true. And I was
Yeah.
going to say that the winning team
Yes.
last fall did something for a slum in Fallujah in
Yes.
Iraq,
Yes.
and that was
They
very
also-
interesting.
Yeah, and they started a pilot project in Tijuana, Mexico. So you
Okay.
don't have to go to Africa or go
Yeah.
places like that. So basically, you come up with a solution, and then so Holt Prize at USC is the local competition. So it's going to take place November 15th. Applications are open to form teams. So after that, so that's the local competition. Whoever wins from USC goes to regionals. So there's the regional finals at Shanghai, Boston, San Francisco, Dubai, and London. So with Holt Prize at USC, we send the winning team to whatever region they want to compete in. So you want to go to London, we'll take care of the winning team, expenses and all that. And then after that, there's going to be 5 finalists. One of them will win. We'll get $1 million presented to them at I think September, and Bill Clinton gives them the award. So $1 million to start your own social enterprise. I would say it's quite easy to get that $1 million if you basically are whatever John has been talking about. If you understand what the environment that you're trying to solve problems for, it's very easy. So I would advise you, I recommend you check out Holt Prize, and maybe Professor Hansen will send you links, but it's a very, very good organization to be involved with.
Yeah.
And also for networking. And I'll just plug in that they took me to stay at a castle in June, just because I was campus director.
So that's a plug to be a campus director,
networking
right?
is amazing, amazing. You can just call up Bill Shannon.
Okay.
But thank you guys. Thanks for letting me do that.
Yeah. So I'm passing that around because we're almost out of time. If you want to.
As usual, because I got us derailed. I'm sorry, Joanne.
No, it's fine. So the stuff that is being passed around is just some of the artisan stuff that Kenyan people make to earn a buck. So I just wanted to show you that to you guys. And I wanted to talk to you about these 2 gentlemen. The gentleman on my right, I actually just met on the streets of Nairobi. I was taking pictures of Nairobi, and he said, take a picture of me. And this was after I came from Kibera, where nobody would let me take their picture. And so
He's like, I want a reality show.
yeah. So this gentleman is very impressive. He's obviously on a wheelchair, but he hustles a lot. He started a group of about 30 people, and they contribute about 30 cents per month to be able to make jikos, which a jiko is just a charcoal burner that people in Kenya, poor people, use to cook their meals. So when I told him that I'm coming to America, please realize that to them America is heaven. And he was like, oh, you have to talk to the students about me and my organization. So I just thought I'll talk a little bit about him. They make the jikos that I told you about, and they were approached by 3 supermarkets to supply the jikos to the supermarkets. And unfortunately, he had to decline the offer. And I asked him, why did you decline? And he said that they did not have the capital to, do the first order to be able to sustain, the project. And I asked him how much money would they need, and he said $5,000, which I calculated $5,000. If you drink a latte from Starbucks every day, for a whole year, it comes to about $1,800. So 5 people would be able to do the funding for this man to get him started with whatever he's doing. And so I told him I'll blog about his cause, and I'm thinking of doing an Indiegogo campaign for him and this gentleman too, but I'm not sure. This gentleman here actually lives right by where I live, so I pass him every day, and he's a quadriplegic. You can't really see it the way he's seated, but he is, and he has slurred speech. So he has a handmade, and you can obviously see this one looks a little bit wealthier than this one. He has a handmade wheelchair that he uses to come. This is his work. He's a cobbler. So instead of sitting at home and waiting for help, he repairs shoes for a living. And I was telling him, I'm very impressed by you, because there's a lot of people who are able-bodied who just want a handout, and every day he's at his job, and when I told him I was coming to give a speech in the US, his friends were like, oh my God, you're going to America, So I had to tell you guys about them. So I would appreciate feedback from the class. I'll leave my email with Professor Hansen so you guys can get in touch with me, because I do want to help these people, but obviously I'm a recent grad. I don't have the funds to help them. And like I said, I thought about doing an Indiegogo campaign, so maybe you can give me feedback of how you think I can help. I think this is my last slide. I was lucky enough to meet the Member of Parliament for Kibera. His name is Honorable Kenneth Okoth. This is not him, this is his team. And I pitched them what Jitahidi Group does, and instantly they got it, and they were very interested in partnering with me. So this is in Kibera, believe it or not. This is Huduma Center. Huduma is a place where you go and get all the government services that you need at one place. Normally you have to pay the fare to be able to go to the CBD to get this done, but Honorable Kenneth Okoth actually put the initiative to bring Huduma Center to Kibera, and he